That's great.
Well, can everyone hear me? Because I can't really hear myself.
Hold the mic.
Okay. Well, this has been a difficult assignment for me, to be sure. And I promise to keep, like my dad would say, my lecture less than 1 hour. Kim did a great job. I'm Greg Hayes. I'm Russell's son, and I'm here to share a few things about my father I think you might appreciate hearing. First, I don't remember ever calling my father Russell or Russ or Dr. Hayes like many of you did. I called him Dad. That is until 10 or 15 years ago when I started calling him the Padre. Especially when talking to Anne, when my dad wasn't around, I would call him the Padre. And even today on my phone, even though the number's gone, there's still a listing in my contacts for the Padre. And there are 2 breathy emails from my dad where you can clearly hear that he's having difficulty getting oxygen into his lungs. Now, when I was little, my dad took my mom, Kim, Kelly, Mark, and me, and later Anne, on many adventures, usually to the mountains. I think that's why my dad accepted his position at the University of Colorado. Simply put, my dad loved the mountains. At times on these adventures to the mountains, one of us kids would start to get tired and begin to ask my dad how much further we had to go in order to reach the end of our journey. Most often my dad would respond, "Oh, it's just right around the corner. We're almost there. We'll be there soon." And would often pull out a lemon drop or lemon drops or horehound candies for us kids to suck on in order to placate our moods and give us enough energy to make it to the end of our journey. It's just right around the corner. We're almost there. We'll be there soon. Now, as some of you know, in August of 2024, my dad contracted a complicated form of pneumonia. And at the same time, or a similar time, an unusual form of the coronavirus. And so, in February, we lost our father, and I lost, to be sure, one of my teachers, one of my very best life mentors, and I realized one of my very, very best friends. Later, I would learn that one of the last things my dad wanted to do was to go get pizza. He wanted to go to Lucky Pie in Louisville to get pizza. So, several days later, my brother Mark and I would go to Lucky Pie to get some pizza. It was a casual atmosphere, just perfect for my father, with a bunch of cycling paraphernalia around. I've been back to Lucky Pie since then, several times. And I always think about my father's, it's one of my father's last wishes, to go get some great pizza. As I mentioned, over the years, my dad has been one of my greatest teachers. I remember how he taught Mark and I how to change flat tires on our bicycles when we were first beginning to ride seriously. I remember how my dad took me up my first rock climbs in El Dorado Canyon and on the Flatirons. And how he took the family on mountain camping trips and countless hikes we went on when we were all very much younger. And of course, my dad took me on every single one of my very first 14,000 foot peaks here in Colorado. I remember, as Kim mentioned, and this is funny, and it's clearly a pattern, that at his study at home, my father would let me pull up a chair when I needed help in math at Fairview High School. I remember how he sometimes didn't appreciate how the teachers at the school were teaching us simply to memorize algorithms in order to solve our math problems. He believed we should be taught why a particular algorithm worked, not just how to memorize them. In these cases, when I was confused with how a particular idea worked in math, he would quietly pull out a very large stack of paper and in his usual way say, "Okay, let's start from the beginning." And of course, all I wanted to know from my dad was the correct answer and would often get frustrated. But you know, my dad was right. The Padre wanted his kids to know why things work and how. He didn't want us to go through life just applying mindless formulas we've memorized in order to solve problems. The Padre wanted his children to understand how things work and why. Now, up until the spring of 2024, my dad and Ann lived in a wonderful horse property over on Valmont between 75th and 95th Streets, right next to a huge parcel of open space. I remember when they first purchased the house, my dad called me on the phone, absolutely thrilled with their new home. I remember how he described the massive front porch to me on the phone, while he, as he often did, would measure large spaces, pacing off the enormous porch and reporting back his best estimate of its length. Soon thereafter, my dad and Ann would build a barn with 2 horse stalls and a wonderful wood shop where my dad built furniture and boxes and other notions that he would give out as gifts on special occasions. To be sure, in my mind, my dad's most beautiful pieces were his hope chests, which he built for several of us out of aged cherry wood. They were graceful and elegant pieces of furniture made to last generations. During those years, I found myself amazed at my dad's craftsmanship and meticulous attention to detail. During this time when my dad and Ann lived at what my father once called evensong, he would often at dinner parties or other gatherings quip that Ann was in charge of the artwork and he was in charge of the wine. Why? Well, you see, because of his training as a scientist and an engineer, he didn't always appreciate some of the artwork that Ann put up on the wall and wanted to hang around. But he would dutifully put them up, measuring and making sure they were straight, and nod and smile, knowing he had his job to do, to be in charge of the wine. During these years, my dad began to teach me how to use his shop, which the family dubbed Russell's Damn Good Workshop. He taught me how to use all the equipment in it, and he allowed me to build my own inventions in the furniture world. Most of my pieces looked good to me, but were usually pretty uncomfortable with edges much too sharp for daily use. I even remember the first picnic table I built for my dad and Ann. When you sat in it, if there wasn't somebody on the other side, it turned into a teeter-totter. So I definitely had some work to do with some of my design elements. But I kept building and playing in Russell's Damn Good Workshop, and even eventually a couple years ago, with his guidance, learned how to build my very first cherry wood hope chest for Zachary and Brooke. As my dad aged, our relationship began to change. And over time, I began to think of my dad not only as a great teacher and life mentor, but also, indeed, one of my very best friends. I loved talking to him about complicated and, to me, mysterious things. My dad was forever asking me questions about cooking and teaching, and I was forever asking him about how things work and the cosmos. Then, several years ago, when I was helping my dad change a tire on a tractor or do something else that he was no longer strong enough to do by himself anymore, he leaned over and whispered to me that times had now changed. Whereas, for many, many years, my dad took care of me, he said, now you are helping to take care of me, my dad. Of course, I was more than happy to help and tremendously honored to join my dad and Anne in this complicated and wonderful journey we call life. Now, finally, I'll share that I remember very fondly one of the last conversations I had with my dad on the phone after NASA reported that a probe, OSIRIS-REx, had found all the precursor elements needed for life on Earth upon a comet named Bennu. He was as excited as I to learn this. In fact, even as his body broke down over the last several months of his life, his mind remained sharp. To the end, my dad, the Padre, remained enthusiastic about life and curious about the world around him. So, let me share what we're fond of saying at Prescott College. The journey is the destination. And wow, what a journey it has been for my dad. From the University of Kansas to Stanford, from the University of Colorado to Cornell, and from the Royal Radar Establishment to the Solar Energy Research Institute and back, my dad has always remained dedicated and serious about his academic life. While doing this, he has forever remained an explorer, ready for his next journey. He has been an explorer of ideas and theories, and an avid explorer of life and the world around him. Dad, Padre, it's right around the corner. We're almost there. We'll be there soon. In the meantime, I think of you every time. I'll think of you every time I make pancakes in the morning, enjoy a lemon drop or a horehound candy, or perhaps a fantastic glass of red wine. And to be sure, every time I have a great pizza. Here's to life well lived and well explored. Goodbye, Dad. Goodbye, Padre. We will miss you tremendously.
Oh.